Welcome, Joy, and thank you for being with us today. I wonder if you would like to start by introducing yourself.
Right. I'm Joy Kirchner, and I'm the Scholarly Communications Coordinator at UBC, based in the library, and I work in the library's Digital Initiatives portfolio. And my role is, amongst other things, to lead the educational response to copyright at UBC.
Great, thank you. Now, there have been some changes with respect to copyright law, and I guess more changes are coming, and faculty and students are a little bit confused, and they don't want to break any laws. So we're wondering, I'm going to ask you some questions about things we can and cannot do with respect to copyright. But my first question is, are you going to be able to give me simple, straightforward, yes and no answers?
No, I mean, that's a great question, actually. There are no simple black and white answers to much of this. As usual, it really depends on the resource that you're using, and so it really is a case-by-case scenario when we're talking about how we can use a resource.
Okay, perfect. Now, my first question is with regard to my role as a researcher. Are there special rules and considerations that I should be thinking about as a researcher? What can I copy and use for my own personal use?
Right. So under the copyright law of Canada, there are a number of exceptions. One of them is called fair dealing, which is the educational exception in the copyright law in Canada. And under this exception, fair dealing, there is provision for a researcher, in my role as a researcher, to make a certain amount of copy without needing to seek permission from a copyright holder. So me as a researcher can certainly, from a copyrighted resource, make a certain amount of copy. It must be insubstantial, and it must be for the purposes of criticism and review, and it must occur in an educational setting. So insubstantial is not defined in the Copyright Act. So we are looking to the fair dealing guideline that UBC has produced, which gives you a guideline on how much copying you can do. So one of the guidelines is, if it's a book, for instance, you can copy 10% of that book without needing to seek permission from a copyright holder. You are free to do that as a researcher for your own personal research use.
Perfect, thank you. Now I'd like to ask you 3 questions about my role as an instructor. First of all, if I'm an instructor in a classroom, sometimes I like to photocopy materials for distribution. Sometimes I have images and other materials on PowerPoint presentations. Sometimes I make course packs. And I'm not really sure now what sorts of things I can and cannot use. Can you give me some guidelines of things that I can use, things that I shouldn't use, and maybe gray areas that I should look a little more closely at?
Okay, I'll answer it first this way. You're quite right that distribution of copy is sometimes a problem. So me as a researcher can certainly make copies for my own personal research use. The issue of distributing that copy beyond me is sometimes a problem. Under the Copyright Act, there is no provision for distribution of copy. So in many cases, you would need to seek permission to distribute a copy in the classroom, including posting on a website or Vista. However, there are some exceptions. The library licenses some over 700 licenses directly with publishers and other kinds of providers where we have negotiated different kinds of rights, including, in many instances, distribution of copy. So call us, let us know what is your resource, and we'll check our license agreement. The other category is anything that is usually an open access collection or has a Creative Commons license. In those cases, the Creative Commons license, a copyright holder has made it explicitly clear to you that you can distribute and post a copy without needing to seek permission from the copyright holder, as long as you attribute it to them.
Perfect. What about things that I've made myself? Can I distribute those?
Yes, as a copyright holder of your own work, you are free to use the work in any way you wish.
And if I've published that work elsewhere?
If you publish that work, then you need to see if you signed a publisher agreement. If you signed a publisher agreement, such as with a journal publisher or a book publisher, chances are you have transferred ownership of your copyright to the publisher, and that is usually in the publisher agreement. It is then the publisher that owns the copyright.
I see. Now, what if I am an instructor on WebCT or Vista? Do the same rules apply?
Yeah, the same rules do apply. If you are using Vista or Blackboard or course management system, you need to think about distribution of copy. Posting material on a website or Vista or Blackboard means you are distributing that work beyond me as a researcher. So you need to consider how that work will be used and what the source is and whether you can do that.
Are there any special considerations for tests or assignments?
Yes, so under the Copyright Act, you can certainly use an insubstantial amount of work from a copyrighted resource and create an assignment or test from that.
Perfect. And if I'm in doubt, where should I go for more information?
If in doubt, we are here to help. You can send a message to ubc-copyright@interchange.ubc.ubcca, or you can take a look at our copyright website at copyright.ubc.ca.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.